Today, we're going to talk about an antibiotic that was once called a miracle drug, but now, well, now it's more of a cautionary tale. We're diving into the story of ciprofloxacin and how a cure could come at such a devastating cost for some people.
That question is really at the heart of modern medicine, isn't it? And for ciprofloxacin, it's the big mystery we need to unpack. How does a drug go from being a celebrated miracle weapon to one of the biggest cautionary tales on the pharmacy shelf? To figure that out, let's go back to the beginning. Okay, so to really get the whole controversy, you first have to understand just how revolutionary ciprofloxacin, or Cipro as most people call it, was when it first showed up. I'm telling you, this wasn't just another antibiotic. It was a total game changer.
So what made Cipro so special? Well, it was its bactericidal nature. See, it's part of this drug family called fluoroquinolones. And unlike a lot of other antibiotics that just kind of stop bacteria from multiplying, Cipro, it kills them dead. It's a seriously potent, broad-spectrum weapon capable of taking down a huge range of bacterial foes.
And honestly, this convenience is what made it a blockbuster. Just think about it for a second. For the very first time, doctors could treat these really severe infections. The kind that used to land you in a hospital with an IV in your arm with just a simple pill you could take at home. Powerful, convenient, yeah, it was an absolute game changer.
So, you're probably wondering, how does it actually do that? Well, its method is both brilliant and, frankly, pretty brutal. It basically turns into a saboteur right there at the cellular level. Let's dive in and see how this thing wages war on bacteria. Okay, so picture this. A bacterium is trying to multiply. To do that, it has to unwind and copy its DNA, right? It's this super complex process run by two key enzymes, DNA gyrase and topoisomerase 4. Now, ciprofloxacin sneaks in and just throws a giant wrench into the whole machine. It blocks those enzymes completely. The DNA copying process literally shatters into pieces. The damage is so bad, so catastrophic, that the cell just dies. Instantly. It's like a precision strike right at the heart of its ability to survive.
And because of this incredibly powerful mechanism, Cipro became the go-to weapon for some of the toughest bacterial infections out there. Its reputation as this super reliable antibiotic, it was built on a really impressive track record.
Its versatility was just astounding. It could take on everything from nasty kidney infections to those incredibly difficult lung infections that cystic fibrosis patients face. But here's what's really telling. Its use against anthrax and plague. Yeah, that plague. Cipro became a cornerstone of biodefense. Governments were stockpiling this stuff in case of a bioterror attack. That's just how much faith we put in this drug.
But then, the story takes a really dark turn. As millions and millions of people were taking this drug, these disturbing reports started to surface. Strange, severe side effects that nobody saw coming. And pretty soon, the regulatory agencies had no choice but to launch a full-blown investigation.
And that investigation led to the FDA's most serious type of caution, the black box warning. Now, this isn't just some warning in the fine print. Think of it like a skull and crossbones on the label. It's a huge, stark alert about potentially life-threatening risks. It's designed to make everyone, doctors and patients, stop and think really, really hard. So one of the first huge warnings was about absolutely devastating tendon damage. We're talking inflammation and even the complete rupture of tendons, most often the Achilles tendon in the back of your heel. And while the risk is higher for everyone, it's way worse for people over 60 or patients who are also taking steroids. So why does this happen? Well, the theory is that the same thing that shatters the bacterial DNA might be causing collateral damage to the powerhouses in our own cells, the mitochondria, and tissues that need a ton of energy, like our tendons, they get hit the hardest. And then came the warning about nerve damage, something called peripheral neuropathy. This is damage to the nerves in your arms and legs, and it can cause just debilitating pain, burning, tingling, numbness. But the single most chilling word in that warning is irreversible. For some people, this damage was permanent. It wasn't going away.
And it gets even more serious. For patients with a very specific neurological condition called myasthenia gravis, taking Cipro could literally be fatal. It could trigger muscle weakness so severe that it leads to respiratory failure, meaning a person could become unable to breathe on their own. Just terrifying.
And on top of all these direct risks, Cipro also has some really dangerous interactions with a lot of common stuff. Something as simple as drinking a glass of milk or taking a multivitamin with it can stop the drug from being absorbed correctly. But it gets more alarming. It can crank up the effects of blood thinners like warfarin, which seriously increases the risk of bleeding. Or it can cause a dangerous drop in blood pressure if you take it with certain muscle relaxants.
So with all this new information coming to light, the medical community had to just completely reevaluate ciprofloxacin. It was no longer this simple go-to solution. It became a really complex calculation of risk versus reward.
And that right there, that's the core dilemma of ciprofloxacin. On one side, you have this incredible power, the ability to kill deadly bacteria that other drugs just can't touch. But on the other side, you have the price, the risk of severe, disabling, and maybe even permanent side effects. So, how do you weigh one of those against the other? It's a tough call.
And that risk-reward calculation gets even more critical when you're talking about certain groups of people. For the elderly, the risk of tendon damage is much higher. For kids, there's a big concern about joint damage, so its use is very restricted. And for pregnant women, it's basically avoided, unless the benefit to the mother is so great that it justifies the potential risk to the fetus.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's this. Cipro has pretty much been demoted. It's been taken off the starting lineup. For common, everyday infections like sinusitis or a simple UTI, well, the risks are just considered way too high now. It's been moved to the bench, reserved only for the really serious infections where safer drugs have already failed or just aren't an option.
And all of this brings us back to that one final, really difficult question. Let me ask you, if you were facing a life-threatening infection and doctors told you it was resistant to other drugs, would you take the gamble? Would you risk a permanent disability for a shot at a cure? It's a heavy, heavy choice, and it perfectly sums up the double-edged sword that is ciprofloxacin.